If you have been anywhere on the internet, you may have heard about a little incident that happened over the pond out there in London. And this little incident is not little at all. So let's talk a little bit about BAFTAs, Tourette's, and who owes an apology. But first, the intro. And welcome back to another episode of the Daily Donna with your host, me, Dr. Donna Oriello, sex and relationship therapist in the Washington, D.C. metro area, author of Drink Water and Mind Your Business, a Black woman's guide to unlearning the BS and healing self-esteem. I'm going to have a disclaimer for this episode. We are talking about mental health, the N-word, and who owes an apology. The disclaimer here is that I am not necessarily a disability advocate, but I do listen to disability advocates, and I am talking about it from a more general mental health space rather than just about Tourette's itself. And I thought that that should be noted. So in case you didn't know, the BAFTAs is basically the Oscars for London. And they had their award where a man who was being honored for his film, I Swear, or because the film is based on his life, John Davidson yelled out the N-word because he has Tourette's. Well, he has Tourette's, and as a result, he yelled out the N-word while Michael B. Jordan and Delroy were on the stage. Let's talk about the basics. Intent versus impact. A lot of people do not intend to harm other people, but the impact is that they harm people. So the question is not just what did you intend, it's also what did you do on the back end after you have had an impact that may have been unintentional. So it feels weird to have to be having this conversation again, but after, the whole, what was it, ANTM docuseries, my very first video walks us through the 5-step apology. First, saying you're sorry, what you're sorry for, making restitution, what you will do next time, and asking for forgiveness. Now, we're keeping these 5 steps of the apology in mind so that we can move forward in this. So, the question has been, I think, who owes an apology? So let's go with BBC because they're the ones that aired this thing on a 2-hour delay and chose not to edit out the N-word from the broadcast. The question that I sit in is, why didn't you edit this out? And my thought process is this. If you believe that Black people are subhuman, if you believe that you are wanting to remind someone of their place, if you are wanting to cause harm, you leave it in. This is not an accident, right? There were other things that were edited out of the broadcast. This was not edited out. And despite what people want to say across the pond, there is not less racism in Europe because it's in Europe. That's dumb. It doesn't even make any sense. So the question is, why didn't they edit it out? And now that they're offering sort of apologies on the back end, like sorry, we didn't edit this thing out, the piece would be that they would need to actually offer a direct apology to Michael B. Jordan and Delroy, not just to us who watched it, which I saw that they did do that, but it's not just to us, it's also directly to them because they were harmed on that stage. And I would even say that it makes me wonder about how we're defining violence, right? A lot of us, we define violence as a physical aggressive act, or something, or usually something that hurts people who are white. And that is because their personhood is not up for negotiation. When a person's personhood is not up for negotiation, anything that harms that person is considered a violation that must be corrected, usually with an apology. However, when you do not see Black people as people, when you see them as subhuman, then they don't become people who you would believe are owed an apology when they are wronged. And furthermore, you are able to negotiate what you believe is actually violence to them. The fact is that Black people are taught in many ways to make allowances for white folk, to harm us, to denigrate us, um, casually uh, to casually commit acts of racism in their everyday lives. And we are expected to endure, and usually with grace, to endure and pay the emotional and physical cost that it does bring upon us. Um, in another video, I talk a little bit about what stress costs you, right? Like what it steals from you. And stealing someone's peace of mind, increasing the cortisol, is literally stealing minutes, if not hours and days off someone's life. So it can be difficult when people don't see you as human and when they believe that violence enacted against you, even unintentionally, doesn't count as violence. Second part. So we know, look, BBC definitely owes an apology. The question is, have they said what they are going to do next time? Have they said why this was not edited out of the broadcast, as opposed to just naming that it was there, right? These are different actions, which sort of, I believe, brings us over to John Davidson. Now, John Davidson has Tourette's, which means that whatever comes out of his mouth may not be reflective of his own thoughts, views, et cetera, et cetera. And so I would say grace is necessary in that portion of it. And this also goes for anyone with any other mental health condition, that your mental health condition is certainly for you to manage and to know about, and when you can, to inform others about. But the other piece is this: the intent was not to harm, right? John is living his life, he's doing what he does. And I like the way that Imani put it, crutches and spice, which is to say that the racism happened after. Who do you believe is owed an apology? Who do you believe is person enough to receive one? And which acts of violence do you see as violent? And does it depend on who's on the receiving end? The apology owed has to go beyond, I was deeply mortified. This is an explanation. This is a statement of Davidson's emotional space, deeply mortified. These are not the words that are an apology. I was deeply mortified is not, I am sorry. I apologize that my words have harmed you. And so, because something is involuntary doesn't mean that no apology is owed. I love that an explanation was given, that like, hey, this is this, it's out of control, it's out of my control, it's not something that I can do anything with. And I don't know if that is supposed to serve as a preemptive non-apology, but it seems as though the explanation is given as though it is the apology. And I have found that this is an area where many people struggle with the difference between intent and impact. But because there was no intention to harm, that means that the impact was not harmful. That is not true. If the intention is not to harm, but the impact was that harm was done, then an apology is owed. Most people, I would go out on a limb to say that a lot of people they don't go outside intending to harm people, that they don't intend to make someone's day just a little bit worse. And yet, when you do, it is up to you to offer an apology for the impact you had. And if you, I guess, really want to, you can talk about what your intention was, but you should also know that sometimes our explaining can come off as excusing, because power dynamics are still present. And we have to be aware of these power dynamics in who we even believe is owed an apology. And while I recognize that as a world, we seem to be well behind on how we deal with anyone who is different from us, right? Anyone who is different from able-bodied, whatever. Any disability becomes a thing that people somehow don't know how to deal with. So your reaction to something can have racist roots. But what you do after your reaction, whether or not you choose to double down, whether or not you choose to apologize, that is where your racism, your sexism, your whateverism begins and ends. So for me, the answer is yes. John Davidson also owes an apology. I was deeply mortified and I excused myself from the auditorium is not an apology. An apology usually starts with the words, I apologize, or I am sorry. I am sorry because you were hurt. Not I'm sorry if you were hurt. The hurt is there because these words, they have power. And despite the fact that it is unintentionally said, it still had an impact. I like to think of it as the equivalent to reduce it down. And I want you to know that I am reducing it down. If someone steps on your foot, or if you step on someone's foot, chances are you didn't do it on purpose. You didn't set out to put your foot over top of this. But it doesn't mean you don't owe an apology because you did. It's like, oh, dang, my bad. I didn't intend to step on your foot. You see how the apology was right there along with the intention not to step on the foot. Like, I ain't do that on purpose. My bad. I'm sorry. Let me make this right. Right? Now, I would say that because we're talking about a disability, because we're talking about a disability, I would say that that part about restitution may look very different, right? That part about making a plan for how to fix this going forward may look different, right? Because one cannot stop having Tourette's. One may not be able to stop having a mental health condition, and one may not be able to stop having some sort of a disability, right? As a matter of fact, I'm going to say one cannot stop having Tourette's, a disability, or a mental health concern. So those steps may look different. And yet, steps 1 and 2, I am sorry, and what I am sorry for would still be, I would say, required. But that's only if you see Black people and certain words as violence. Anyway, y'all know how I like it. Discourse, not disrespect. Keep it cute in the comments. Um, I want to know, I guess, where you stand in this, who you feel owes an apology and why. Remember to keep it cute though. So if you are here to, I guess, display your your ableist rhetoric, keep it to yourself. Your racist rhetoric, also keep it to yourself. I don't want it, right? That's your gift, and it should only be to you. I don't want none. And thank you for thinking of me, but really, I just don't want none. I think that we all have a lot of learning to do, and we can start by, I would say, understanding intent, impact, and maybe refamiliarizing ourselves with an apology, the full 5 steps, and whether or not we are people who want to continue to shirk our responsibility because we have decided our intent matters more than our impact, especially where it comes to certain people. All right, y'all, you're the bee's knees. And I will see you again when? Tomorrow. Bye.